you all to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse, and I'm going to be doing a talk today about the mid-air collision at the Reagan National Airport and to discuss the different aspects of it that I think the public should be considering. There's been a lot of wonderful people that have been going through simulations and talks and sharing what pilots go through, what the different air vehicles are like to fly, and what might have happened, including a lot of people who are suspect about the reporting of it, or there's a lot of people that are angry about it, upset about it, sad about it, enraged about it. But anytime there's a mass public death about anything, it upsets everybody, and people react differently and respond differently to this. I always look for how do we make it better? How can this be avoided? What can be improved? What are the system aspects of the event that led to the catastrophe that can be modified, changed, eliminated, or added to make things better? And you'll be hearing me talk about this in a whole systems approach to problem solving, because at the end of the day, we cannot bring back those that lost their lives. We can't. And it's very reflexive to try to attribute blame to who did it and who caused it. And I think we've all gotten in the habit in an instantaneous world to make assumptions very fast. There's all kinds of videos that were taken. Some are not so good. Some are okay. And I just want to say how sorry I am for all those that lost their lives, and family members and friends that lost their friends and loved ones, and to the communities at large. The loss of innocence, of young lives. All lives matter, but the young lives who were so full of hope and excitement about life, these skaters, their teams, their coaches, there was such a spirit of possibility and an excitement about the future. It's always heartbreaking when you see that people have passed away unexpectedly, violently, with so much hopefulness about the future in their lives. And that's really sad. So I want to acknowledge that. And when I saw the photos of the young people and the skating that they were doing and how excited they were, it really pained me. Even though I acknowledge all loss of life is sad. I think that I'm going to talk about things, and I'm going to bring up a context for this talk. And I want you to pay attention to how I'm articulating and opening it. Number one, I made a distinction when I interviewed Lynn Buchanan, one of the great remote viewers of our time, controlled remote viewers of our time, in a piece that we did called The Real Stargate, how we introduced the remote viewing programs and how he was part of the early Stargate project at U.S. Army Intelligence. And I opened that show by saying there's the civilian population and there's the classified population. And even though we coexist on Earth, it doesn't mean that information, data, events, news are shared with us. It's kind of like having two totally different hard drives in one computer. And let us suppose one handles, let's say, a blockchain or something, and one handles something totally different. Okay? One is centralized, one is decentralized. You and I live in an existence where, because of the split, of conduct, of information flow, of circulation, of events, and the secrecy involved in one domain of reporting, and who's allowed to know, and how much are you allowed to know. The mid-air collision at the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., at the Reagan National Airport brings together the confluence and the conflict between these different domains of perspective and conduct. So it's not as simple as a traditional civilian event. And there's a lot of sensitivity to how we talk about it because you have the Army involved and you have civilian life involved, and they're very different. They're even on different frequencies to the air traffic controllers at Reagan National Airport. So understand that I understand that when a certain amount of the population does not accept the official reporting of what happened and what was a Blackhawk helicopter doing even near a commercial airliner, civilian airliner, people have the right to be suspect, to question it, to not trust the reporting. So I want to open up space right here that just because the administration changed in this transition does not mean that we, the public, have to accept every official report that happens. Like, it's okay to sit with it and not know if you accept it. And I'm not advocating for not accepting it, but I'm saying there should be nothing wrong with sitting with it and seeing if it feels right to you, if your sense of it is right. Of all the airports this happened at, it happened at one of the most controlled, protected, congested airports in the world, and with the most amount of dignitaries, government people flying in and out. It's an airspace that's very controlled. The runways was 7,169 feet which is where it was originally going. In runway 33, that's 5,200 feet. Very, very small, very, very narrow, very tight. Very meticulous landings need to happen there. And even though the airplane was being directed at first to go into runway 1, when that change happened and he had to make a change to go into runway 33, it's a different kind of preparation. And while it's done all the time, it still requires more focus, a special kind of attention to detail. I also want to say that I am not an accident investigator. And I don't claim to be. I don't work for the National Safety Transportation Agency, and that I think they're doing a great job in terms of reporting and keeping people up to date with what they can talk about without necessarily giving premature assessments. I think it's the public talks and briefings have been very good and very, very fair. It's called the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, actually. Really, really appreciated their briefings. I want to say that though it is commonplace on a daily basis for helicopters, not only Blackhawks, but military helicopters, to go in and out of a specific area right next to the airport, the runways, it occurred to me when I first heard the reports of the accident, this is intuitively, what are Army helicopters doing anywhere near where civilian airplanes have to land in very tight spaces? And though they have a very specific laid out area that they are allowed to go in and out of, I've read, and I've spent about 3-4 days on this, I've read that in different locations that they have about 500 to 600 a day of helicopters flying in and around this area. And the first thing that came to me was that's the first thing on a structural level that would be worth contemplating remaking that. In other words, it's not just because of this one accident. It's because there's been so many near misses. And I've read a lot of comments of people having heard the air traffic controllers having to reprimand military units in helicopters who are not following the rules, kind of like going rogue, if you know what I'm saying. This is not to impugn the military, what I'm saying. But it is different. It's a different culture. It's a different kind of a special group mentality. And it would be very wise for the whole thing to be reconsidered, that the military does not fly helicopters in an airplane-dominated airspace. I think that's doable, and it would make the entire area so much safer, so much less congested, so much less dangerous. Why should it be dangerous for an airline to fly into Reagan National? It shouldn't even be in question. And apparently, from a lot of pilots have said in a very delicate professional way, you have to be very careful flying in there. It's not just like flying in anywhere. The runways are short. The congestion is incredible. At night, there's lights everywhere, and it's not always easy to see what's the distinction between a plane light and the lights all around you. There's so many things I learned. First of all, I find it fascinating. And you have such a respect for pilots, what they go through, what they have to know, the number of things they have to pay attention to in takeoff, in regular flight, and in preparing to land, and then landing. And the number, just the sheer amount of specific attention that has to be paid and specific things and protocols that have to be followed, it's staggering. It's really a marvel to behold. And even though a lot of planes are flown today by computers, the pilots still have huge responsibility and have to do very specific things and make sure specific things are happening to keep everybody safe and get people from point A to point B. In terms of the original report that the helicopter was on a continuity of government mission, I would just, in my own investigative ability, I would just put that to the side. I wouldn't let that get in the way of looking at this on a whole systems level. That's the report. And I don't think that has anything to do with what happened. The other thing is that apparently when you're flying into this airport, anything under 1,000 feet, your system that would originally communicate with you that you're getting too close to another airliner or, air vessel will not work. And so you wouldn't see if somebody's too close to you necessarily. Nothing would go off. Nothing would tell you that somebody's too close to you in an airline. So I find that interesting. And what was said is that, well, the reason for that is that there's so many aircraft coming in to land, it would be going off all the time. I wonder if this is an opportunity for an inventor or a modifier or some type of builder to have only a certain type of technology go off and be made very specific to under 1,000 feet. Then I guess it's called TCAS. The original TCAS is something that was created to alert pilots that they're in a potential danger zone and that, there could be a collision of some kind. But TCAS doesn't work under 1,000 feet. So this is an opportunity for an invention or a modification or something to be put in. And this is exciting to me. This just smacks of something being able to put in place that handles 1,000 feet and below, even a different sound. A different type of device. So I wanted to say that. I want to talk about the air traffic control part of it. I've known for years, and I'm sure many of you have, that air traffic control departments, facilities have been hurting for many years. There's been a shortage of available trained air traffic controllers all over the country. I don't know how it is outside of the country, but we know for sure in America. And there's been many, many near misses all over the country. And the thing is, even though flying in the airlines is safer than driving, there's this great ability now to really transform the domain. And so I want to say that within the departments, whatever it takes to get trained, qualified people ushered in to do work, whatever it takes, it needs to happen. It's actually been so many years it's needed to happen. This is an opportunity for this to be focused on, a space to be made for it. in it to happen. So we have an opportunity, an occasion is calling us forth for something to be set up and built to alert any air vehicles that there's something close to them and where it's located from 1,000 feet on under. Something that TCAS doesn't deal with. That's an innovation opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. Next, it is said that the helicopters are supposed to fly from 200 feet elevation and below. It is reported that the Blackhawk helicopter was flying way above 200 feet, approximately to 300 or 350 feet. That has not been verified, but that is what is being spoken in different circles. But until we verify that, we wait. But if that were happening, we could get lost in the weeds there, and you could say, well, they were flying too high. Yes, but that's not the question. The question is, should they be flying at all near commercial airliners? And I say, this is my own personal thing, absolutely not. They have no business being in that space. No business. It is their business because they were sharing a flight space. But if it were me, I would make an executive decision that that is not going to happen anymore. Never at night and never with commercial airliners flying in there. It is a recipe for ongoing disaster. And there's no reason why commercial airliners should have to go through any more undue stress when you have short runways to fly into Reagan National. That's just wisdom to me talking. Now, we're going to call the helicopter Pat 25, it's call letters, and we're going to call the airliner Blue Streak. And I'm now going to talk to you about wisdom elements of the relationship between Pat 25, the helicopter, air traffic control, and Blue Streak. Now, I'm going to say what I'm going to say for purposes of strengthening the existing and future air traffic control scenarios and possibly questioning a protocol or possibly opening a space in an existing protocol and adding something to it to modify it, and the modification of which could happen federally. And it is this. Apparently, when Pat 25 had told the air traffic controller that they would like visual separation, which means they like to be the one to determine what they see, where they're going, etc. When that happened, to me, and the air traffic controller gives them visual separation, which means they're now, the helicopter's now independent, and whatever they can see, they'll be responsible for whatever happens. I don't like this. This, to me, is an opening for trouble because you are never going to see fully in those helicopters the way they are positioned, And I think this helicopter had 3 people in it, not 4. Think of it like split in like a quadrant. They can't see. Their visibility is not that great. And remember, it's dark. There are lights everywhere. I think on a national level, we should, and the people in charge should consider a different protocol. And this is not about, blaming the air traffic controller. I think the communication could have been better. Like the air traffic controller could have said, you are this close to the airliner. Make sure that you got it. Not did you see it. You're this close to the air, to Blue Streak. Do you see Blue Streak? You're 500 feet, whatever it is, whatever was the amount of space. That was vague, not did you see it. So I think the communication was shoddy there. That could be improved. When Pat 25 says, yes, we see it or we got it. To me, also the responsibility is in Pat 25 to have verified, we're verifying it at X feet. Is that what you got? There needed to be yet another part of the process inserted. It didn't happen. And so the handoff is part of the area that needs tightening up, cleaning up, both in the communication side from air traffic control and from the aircraft side, Pat 25, the helicopter. When they asked for visual separation, they needed to identify and clarify what do they see? Where is it? To air traffic control, and air traffic control confirm back to them. Then you hand it off. so that you're talking about the same thing. Okay, again, you don't need to be an expert in this to look at the different areas that could be cleaned up, tightened up, eliminated, made better, etc. Be listening on that behalf. What else? When I first started to hear the different reports about how the pilot and the people in Pat 25, the helicopter, had 500 hours or 1,000 hours, and you think as a civilian, when you hear that, you think, oh, that's really good. They're experienced. But when you talk to other people in this space who are pilots who have flown, a lot of them don't agree that that's an experienced pilot. That is not an experienced pilot in a helicopter. Certainly not at night. Certainly not in DC, at one of the most congested airports. Actually dangerous airports to land in, given the number of things going on there, short runways. And so, you really wonder, this is back at the Army, if some modifications, if they're still going to fly and share this space, no matter what, and there's going to be no changes to who can fly in this space and when, I think the Army needs to come up with some things that cannot be done. You can't fly with 3 people in a Black Hawk. No, not in a civilian zone where mostly civilians are landing. Not even in D.C., not even in Reagan National. And so maybe there's a workaround there. Maybe there's a very, very big undertaking that says you can't do this and you can't have people doing whatever they want. And the question of whether there's night goggles, who cares? Who cares whether the helicopter had night goggles on? They should know better. This is the Army. They're flying very important people in and out of that area. And they know what it is at night, how difficult it is to see with all the lights, how these night vision goggles can make things blurred. So for the media to go on and on about did they have their night vision goggles on is irrelevant. It's irrelevant because the Army should know that. It's not like flying in the desert. You're flying in a very crowded, highly lit place where lights are very confusing. A lot of lights, a lot of confusion. So this is not rocket science. This is wisdom. Don't be diverted by, did they have on their goggles? This is a diversionary part of the conversation. Where the action is in this events are in the big questions. And to bring in a transformation into this, there's the air traffic control domain. There's the Army flying Blackhawks all through there. There's any other helicopters that are flying in and out of there. There's the commercial airliner side. There's the how. When do you get notified that you're too dangerously close or you're on approach to being too close to another flying vehicle? So there's all these different parts of this, and they all have to be tended to. I'm not going to get lost in, was it a woman flying? Was she gay? Was she bisexual? Was she transsexual? Was she a trans? To me, that's also a potential to get lost. Even the bottom line is there were 3 people in there. Okay, somebody okayed this mission for her and them to fly that Blackhawk in whatever condition it was in. I understand that DARPA has the ability to fly Blackhawks autonomously. So if you know that, you may look at this whole event very differently, And so this is what I'm talking about. We're going to circle back to you have the civilian universe and you have the classified universe. They're very different. They have different capabilities, different technology, different access, different everything. So when you go on a whole systems level to look at what's happening and what has happened, you have to take them all into account. People are complaining about there's fog all of a sudden appearing in Los Angeles, like unnatural out of nowhere. Well, if you know the patterns on this and you understand that weather has been weaponized, all kinds of access to weather, everything we ever thought of, from mosquitoes created by Bill Gates, hundreds and millions dropped into environments. We are not living in the world that you and I thought we were. And so what I want to say to you is when you go to solve a problem, you have to be totally open, learn new things, look for where can we innovate, where can we make it better, where can it be made better in all these different areas. It's not that it's hard, it's challenging because we all want a quick answer to this. Just do this. Let's just suppose that one part of it gets remedied. Let us suppose that helicopters cannot fly in that area or can only fly in certain specific times. That won't be enough because there's different parts of this that have to be tended to. And if they're tended to, you'll have a whole systems resolution. You will have better capability, and at one of the most highly congested airline areas, you will have put in systems and better processes and protocols to have safer everything. So for those of you who are interested in what I'm trying to get out, which is my arrival into Virginia and what happened as a story, if you're interested in that, please write. Go to rainmakingtime.com or .ch and let me know you're interested, if you'd like that to be live or taped. And if you have questions about anything I said or about the midair crash at the Potomac River at Reagan National, please do. I'd really like your comments. If you're interested in communications, counsel, coaching, whole systems coaching, bringing products to market, packaging them, on a whole systems level, call the Rainmaking Company, 626-398-8652, or send a message to my company at rainmaking.com. And thank you so much for listening. I hope that this communication, that this segment is in honor of the people that lost their lives, that they weren't lost in vain or their lives weren't lost in a blame game, but that we're really going to roll up our sleeves and contribute what we can to making everything better. I love you. God bless you. It's Rainmaking time.